Addiction, one of the greatest vices of our civilized world, takes many forms. Drugs, booze, sex, the list goes on, and the world of Fallout falls prey to addiction's wretched claws just as we do, especially at the Commonwealth's Vault 95. Looking like just another gunner outpost on the outside, Vault 95 resides in the southwestern quadrant of the Commonwealth. Find it and you'll have to blast your way through a standard gunner unit, equipped with lasers, rifles, and assaultrons. Once you break through the initial guard force, hop into an elevator and head into the main vault. Vault 95 is in standard Fallout vault shape, horribly decrepit and run down, even though this one has a living population. I guess the gunners can't really be bothered to pick up a couple of pieces of trash, even if it's where they sleep. After taking out another large encampment of gunners, the main hub of Vault 95 will be yours to explore. All of the other corridors and rooms of the vault branch out of this main area, so it makes sense that the Overseer's room looks over this section. In the Overseer's room, we can see the first hints of what happened to the residents of Vault 95. What's surprising in this room is that there are a lot of residential skeletons in it. Not really the kind of privacy and seclusion that we typically find in Overseer's rooms and other vaults. Also, the skeletons' bodies, being set up in a circle of chairs, looks oddly like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. The Overseer's terminal in the corner should give some more insight into the workings of how the people of Vault 95 lived, or maybe even what Vault-Tec's experiment in this vault was. Looking inside it, you can see that Vault 95 was set up to be a democracy, where everyone votes on what they want to happen in the vault, and even on who the Overseer, named Overseer-elect in this vault, should be. Additionally, the terminal shows that the members of Vault 95 are indeed all addicted to some substance, and that the vault plan is for them to attend meetings to help work through their addiction. Is Vault-Tec actually trying to help people overcome their addiction? So far, Vault 95 doesn't look all that evil. But then again, this is Vault-Tec we're dealing with, not really the shining beacon of morality in the Fallout universe. The terminal is also able to open a master lock door to the facilities wing, one of the two main wings of the vault. However, the other wing, the residential, is the harbor of the history and story of the vault that we seek. Heading on into this wing, more gunners are eager to be disposed of, but you can also start to see some alcoholic beverages and chems around. Vodka, whiskey, Buff-Out, Med-X. Are the gunners these big of junkies? Their militaristic attributes would make it seem like they'd be too strict to be this heavy into addictive substances. But the only others who could have been using these were the residents of Vault 95, back when it was first in use. How and why would a vault about curing people's addictions come across all these highly addictive alcohols and chems? A terminal around the area might offer some much needed explanation. Signing into the terminal, you can see it's assigned to one R. Gutierrez, and some grave knowledge can be attained. From the files on the terminal, it seems that Gutierrez had some secret orders from Vault-Tec. He was to assume the disguise of a normal vault dweller and fulfill this role for 5 calendar years. After this time, Gutierrez was ordered, by Vault-Tec, to open a secret cache of every chem and alcohol that the residents of Vault 95 desperately wished to avoid. He was then to document the response of the community following their discovery of the stash. It seems that Gutierrez had no qualms with this plan because even though he acknowledged that every member of the vault had overcome their addiction when there was no alternative, a hole in the wall very similar to what he described in his terminal can be found a few meters away, and it's stashed with every addictive substance imaginable in the Fallout universe. There's vodka, there's whiskey, Psycho, Mentats, beer, Buff-Out, Radaway, Rad-X. Whatever the residents of Vault 95 wanted to avoid for the rest of their lives is right here in plenty. And it seems that some of the vault dwellers couldn't resist. The room adjacent to the cache of chems are littered with substances and skeletons. It seems that many of the members of the vault couldn't resist their vices and succumbed to them. The skeleton in the showers favored vodka, the one in the bathroom, Psycho. The room of 2 wanted a lot of both Psycho and Jet. The last resident in the area got to fix some Psycho and Jet, plus whatever he or she could fit into the aluminum canister beside their dead body. The decayed bodies surrounded in alcohols, chems, or both paint a picture of relapse and overdose resulting in death for multiple unfortunate residents of Vault 95. Yet one of the skeletons in the area is completely drug and alcohol free. Directly outside of the hole, a skeleton is lying on the ground with only a 10mm pistol beside it. It appears that this resident committed suicide once they realized the contents of the stash, choosing death over a life even in the presence of chems and alcohols. Perhaps the resident knew that they wouldn't be able to resist the clutches of addiction like the others in the neighboring rooms, and decided a bullet to the brain was better than a life spent addicted or a death from overdose. A little farther away from the stash, and through a couple additional gunners, lies a room barricaded from the inside out. Looks like one of the vault residents chose to take a stand against addictions when the chems were released. Signing on to the terminal in the room, you can see into the mind of one J. Scott, as it was when the Devil of Addiction was released into the vault. Scott records that gunshots were fired, saying that others were fighting, probably over who gets which chems and alcohol. Although the shots could have been caused by a variety of things. Someone in the overseer's room could have shot everybody in the room during one of their AA meetings, a possible cause as to why they all died in their chairs. Possibly multiple suicides around the vault occurred. Maybe members started shooting others who chose to use again, trying to stop addiction from taking control of the whole vault. Following, an understandable resentment for Vault-Tec can be seen in Scott's logs. He realized that this was all part of the plan to research and document the phenomena of addiction and how live humans react to different aspects of it, and he cursed Vault-Tec for their immorality and cruelness. Through the later logs, Scott's will can be seen breaking down, eventually completely collapsing, with Scott giving up on staying away from the drugs and just wanting to be with his friends, hoping that, quote, somebody's left. We can only assume the worst for Scott and the others. The bowels of Vault 95 continue the sad story of destruction and death that we have seen so far. Near the reactor lies one of the most concentrated pits of substances and death seen away from the stash. Buffout, alcohol, and Med-X lay scattered among the bodies. Perhaps these were close friends and they all just got carried away in the high of their relapse, losing their lives in the process. Maybe they really didn't take a lethal dose of chems and being near the reactor somehow triggered a deadly reaction. They could have even been hiding away from the temptations that they knew that they couldn't resist, only to have some unwanted guest bring these harbingers of death to them through one way or another. Unfortunately, we can only guess as to what happened. The truth may always lie in a mystery, but it is assuredly a depressing and tragic tale. Heading back on up to the vault proper, one other major wing is left, the facilities wing, which tells less of what happened in the fall of Vault 95 and more of what the residents would have wanted to happen. After fighting through the final and lead gunner division, as suggested by the master lock door, a glimpse into the more positive side of the vault can be seen. Even though they have now been riddled with gunner abuse and the substances which wrought the destruction of the vault, the cafeteria, offices, classroom, and detox room speak to the day-to-day life of the dwellers overcoming addiction and trying to live the most normal and best lives that they could given their circumstances. The people of this vault, like almost any other, were just trying to survive and make sense of the turmoil that had taken over their planet. This may have even been one of the more optimistic vaults, due to the nature of the people that it was comprised of. Rather than fret over the loss of society as they knew it, they carried the mindset that this vault life had given them a new beginning, a chance to start over, as Scott put it in his terminal. But Vault-Tec seized all that from the residents to try and further its own knowledge at the expense of human lives, this time with concerns to addiction. It's kind of funny, kind of morbid too, to think that an entire vault of people was lost trying to gain better insight into a problem that has been answered by a relatively cheap solution in the modern day Commonwealth. Addiction of any and every kind can be cured by one trip to most any doctor, and at a fairly cheap price too. There could be a chance that something Vault-Tec learned in Vault 95 helped further the progress that eventually culminated at this resolution, but the chances are gravely slim. The only thing that can be certain is the demise of the residents of Vault 95. As a quick aside, I just wanted to note the abundance of enamel buckets in this vault, enamel paint most likely being the emptied content of them. Almost every single section of the vault has a couple of these white buckets or just plain old paint buckets, and this is important to note because paint, although generally only spray paint, is a method in which some people use to get high. Huffing spray paint is an incredibly intense, bizarre fun, and long-lived high that's not even remotely worth it, as one retired user put it. And the huge amount of this in an addiction-centered vault is almost assuredly not a coincidence. The members of Vault 95 had yet another substance along with the more conventional chems and alcohol, which might have been available to tempt them the whole time they occupied the vault. That sucks.